Welcome to Steel Beam Rally Team, sponsored by Clark's Corvair Parts. I'm Tyler. Today we're going to be making some unobtainium floor panel seat bracket patches for our new floor pan installation. Now, I could not find anything anywhere on the internet, so all we're working off of is this little template from my car. It's rusty and crappy. We're going to end up with these patches ready to weld in. But first, let's go to the junkyard for some scraps. We're here at French Lake Auto Parts in Annandale, Minnesota. Gonna try to find some Corvair parts, but you can see all around they got what seems like endless classic cars. We even got up here a couple of Kaisers, which are pretty sweet. A row of Kaisers. I've got Tri-5 Chevys as far as the eye can see, and I'm told that they have one single red Corvair coupe early model. So let's go find that. This side was just as rusty as mine, probably rustier, but someone put another piece of metal underneath, so that's not an original floorboard. But I can cut pieces off of the bracket itself and then attach it to mine, and I can use kind of these pieces to rebuild the piece under it. So it's kind of it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing, and this is the only EM Corvair they have. I've had some stuff in rust remover for a few days and looks pretty good. This is the part that was never painted from the factory. This is the part that was painted, but it takes out most of the rust, converts it over to an inert substance. I'm going to take the stuff out of rust remover here. I'm not sponsored by Rust Remover, but I am sponsored by Clark's Corvair Parts, so go check them out if you need some Corvair parts. This one has a bunch of gunk on it that I think just needs to be wire wheeled out, but I was scared of wire wheeling more since we have holes in this actually. I was hoping that would clear out, but it didn't. Then we have the stars of this show. These are the seat brackets, so here's what I want it to basically look like when it's done, but I want to have a big square of metal around it, and this is supposed to come down and weld onto the floorboard. So we gotta replace that part. And then we have to create one of these things all the way over with a flange out of this, and this has been obviously quite corroded. We have a corrosion on this flange and on this side, so it's going to be a multi-prong approach on this one, and we have two more pieces to work with from the car, maybe just the one from the other side. I'm going to go rinse these things off and we'll come back. Here's what we're dealing with, and you might be asking, hey, if you're sponsored by Clark's Corvair Parts, why don't you go and buy a new stamping from Clark's Corvair Parts? That's because no one on this planet Earth reproduces or even saves these things. I seem to be the unlucky one who got a car that the window was down on, or the window was missing for years, so I get to deal with the floor pan rust that comes with an open window. So this is the one that came out of the car. I forgot to actually clean this up, so we're gonna have to go through and get this thing all clean. But it can show you how bad mine was compared to the passenger side on the junkyard car. A lot of work to do here. It's been about 24 hours. Not looking bad. This one could probably use some more. We'll pop that back in and work on the rest. We got the piece from the car de-rusted, cleaned off, and dried. Now I have to figure out a jig to allow me to reproduce the angle on the front end of this. It is different from the rear angle, so I can't just cut off a rear end and put it on the front, unfortunately. I wish I could. But we're going to mark out some things, and I think I have a solution for this. There are 7 basic parts to this piece when I'm talking about metalworking and repairing it. The first is the flange on the back, second is the upright on the back, Then there's the radius here, the top part, the radius on the front part, and the front flange. So what I have on this one is I have the back flange, back, radius, top, and just barely have a radius on the front. I think I can cut this shorter and weld to it. So what I have to find is potentially a better radius on the front. I want to find a front end of it and the flange. I have two of these. This one has holes in the back flange, so I'm not going to bother starting with it. I'm going to start with the back flange here. We know it'll line up perfectly, and we can start working on the flange here and the front section. So we're going to go roughly like this. Cut that off. We're going to cut this off. We're going to replace that radius. Then we need a front section, and it's the same width as this. So I'm going to end up cutting probably this section out. And I can cut a little bit wider and fill in that hole if I need to. I have to measure that. That'll go in underneath the radius, and we will have all the way down to here, and I can make the sheet metal flange with just stock sheet metal. I think the best way to do this is to put a piece of steel on here, clamp it on. I can put this over here, and then we can add another piece of steel on the back. We're indexing to the top of this good piece, then we're going to index to the top of the bad piece, index to the back of the good piece, and the back of the bad piece. So that should allow us to have it set in the vertical and the horizontal. We're not going to worry about side to side because it is what it is. That's going to be the least of our issues right here. So what I want to do, I'll probably tack these, then I'll get this and this clamp out of the way, be able to work around here, and we can start cutting this thing down. Well, I removed this piece of the bar so I can put oh, that doesn't work. A little bit. Hopefully get a straight line off this. Alright. We're going to cut there. We can duplicate roughly on this one because I know that I'm about that far away from my edge. And I can also put a second bar on here when I put the new one on. So I'll be able to locate everything correctly. Let's get to cutting. Now I'm happy with it. So I cut on this side of the line. So now on this one, I'm going to cut on this side of the line. That way I have a little bit extra material to work with. If I mess up, I'll be able to take that off. That turns out to be a rather small piece. Rather warm as well. That should go right there. How deep do we want it? About 2 inches. Will bring us up to the theoretical intersection here. The line is definitely not straight. There's a little wrinkle here that's sticking out and it's making it look like this line isn't straight, but if I measure from this side, there's less of a wrinkle. That's going to be a better angle. Anyway, we're going to have a hole in the middle, and I might have to take the hole out, but for now it's going to be okay. Hey! What's up, little guy? We got her trimmed up. As long as these two pieces are flush to each other this way, we should have the right angle. So I'm going to make sure that they're kind of flush this way, and then we will tack them together. I did cut a little bit too much on this side, so I'm going to have to figure something out for that, but it shouldn't be a huge issue. Let's hold this thing up here, and yeah, I think it's going to look really good. I'm going to finish weld this thing so it's all done. And then when I put it on here, I'll only have to weld this one seam. A lot of heat to put into this thing. I'm not going to pretend the welds are pretty. I had an issue with them cratering, and I think I finally got it worked out a little bit better. I think I had too high of a wire speed and it was too hot for a little bit there. But you know what? This is all going to hold just fine, and considering the pitting that's going on right here in the replacement piece, it's not an issue. So we're going to grind this down on this side because I have a piece that's going to have to lay over this, another bracket. It's going to have to lay flush. Backside I might try to touch up a little bit. I'm not too worried about people judging my welds from the inside of my seat bracket under the carpet. We got the piece fitted up here. It's nice and flush on this side. We got a gap on this side, but that's why we have our little friend here. Let's go in and tack this up over here, and then I can try to really fine tune it on this side and get it tacked up. The angle seems to be right, and we have plenty of overrun here so we can cut it off later where it needs to be. That was cratering really bad. I need to take a welding class. I need to learn how to do this. I'm not a good welder, but I can do well enough to get it together, and I ground enough down to make sure that I don't have any big craters in there to fill. A couple little spots I could do with, but I'm not going to worry about it because it's going to be covered up anyway. So I think I'm going to take this angle iron off now. Got a couple tack welds to break, and we can get on that flange down there. I'm liking this so far. I think it's coming together pretty well. What I'm not liking is that my flange might be going straight through this hole, but we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. With it hanging off the edge, at least I'm not stressing it. You can go and measure this stuff. It looks like it's 2 inches. Oh man, that lines up perfect. I'd like to clean this up a little bit before I install it. Probably do another round of rust remover. Let's go over and take this thing to the vise and bend this line up. Well, I just did something awesome and I screwed up. I couldn't figure out how to bend this thing, so I cut on the line, and I should have cut on the line above. I have an option to either cut it off and weld a piece on, or to weld these holes back up and cut it a little bit higher. We're gonna go with this. We have the bracket clamped onto the top of the table. There's a little flange back there I can get onto, so that's upright, and then we have a strap that's clamped onto the back flange, so that's gonna be flat on the floor. This is gonna be flat on the floor. This strap helps me kind of locate that flange that I'm putting on the front. Let's go tack this thing in. I know it's gonna want to turn and angle a lot when I weld it, but hoping I can get it close enough. Welds out here look pretty decent to me. I'm pretty happy with them overall. Got a couple goobers, but not too bad. On the bottom side, this was actually upright, so I was welding on a vertical, and I got a lot of cratering. Same settings, obviously, so I just maybe should have had a different angle for that. Oh well, still learning, and we're gonna go with it. I gotta grind this off because we're gonna have that other sheet of sheet metal there. It's gonna go pretty close in there. I want to make sure that's all smooth, and then we'll grind this down and make sure that everything is penetrating here and I don't have any big craters. Gotta be honest, I was getting pretty discouraged this morning and not really feeling like working, but I am jazzed up now that I've gotten this piece of old filing cabinet divider bent up in the exact 45-degree double bend that I want for this bend. So I think we're going to clean this thing up. I'm going to cut this off. I got a couple lines scribed on there, and we should be able to cut off this part and tack that in, and then we're going to go through and cut this part off and then put our double bend in. And I might add a piece on here too, I'm not sure. We're going to try to make this thing into not only clean and not only usable, but like a lot more material than I need, so I can always cut it down afterward to put it in the car. We're going to cut this apart, we'll get going on this, and I think it's going to work pretty well. Decisions. I have the bottom booger welded in place. It's about as good as I can get it, and I don't think there are any holes in here. I think to get more access to the weld and to just do a better job on the top of this weld, I'm going to pop this whole bracket off here. There are 2 little spot welds I can drill out, and should give me a better job overall. What's going on? We have a third weld that is not visible. I believe so. Oh, there's something else there. What is that? That's a third weld, isn't it? It's wild. For the next part I'm going to do, here's my piece that I bent up in the vise, and this worked really well for me, and I'm really excited about putting this in because it's probably the best repair piece I've made yet. It's a 3/4 inch gap, 3/4 inch gap, 3/4 inch gap, and I think it's a 45-degree angle. Did it by look. So it matches up pretty nicely there, and what I'm going to do is a technique that Fitzy on Fitzy's Fabrication calls a cut and butt. And that is, you take it in here, you press it up against the old piece, tack it on one side, and then you can cut the other side out and then drop it in, tack it flush, and then cut the first tack out and then tack that flush. So you're kind of going like 1, down, down, tack, tack, done. So it allows you to get your piece in the exact same location without having to mess around with cutting an exactly straight line and all that stuff. Hoping this will work for me very well here. Let's go at it. So I've got this side tacked up enough that it's in a straight line, and it's not going to flip side to side. Now I'm going to hold this down. Actually, I might just clamp it down. I go and cut the line here underneath. I'm going to go at an angle, so hopefully it kind of laps together when I take it down. Alright. So with that down, I should be able to pull this whole piece, and we will actually bend that lower part down a little bit. Now we're pretty flush. We're good enough now, I think, that we can make this happen. Oh God, I have a bump on my back of my head from what we did yesterday, and the welding helmet just sits right on it. God, it hurts. Okay, we're gonna go. Oh, well, I'm just gonna go here and struggle off camera for a while. See you guys in a little bit. Alright, well, I think that's as good as it's gonna get. We got a lot of boogers in here, but it's solid boogers, and they keep going. Oh, let's check this over the light. Not seeing anything. Oh, a tiny little dot right there I can get, but otherwise, a tiny dot there that's in the actual metal itself, not even in my weld. It's pretty minor stuff in relation to the whole thing. Going to use this as a spot welding opportunity, and I'm not going to fix that. We'll have to come back and get that little hole. Otherwise, got a bit of a warp that way. This way's looking okay, serviceable. I might touch this up with a floppy paddle or something, make it look a little bit better, but I'm not too concerned. It's more of a, this is more likely to catch and hold moisture and rust if I leave it like this with all the little cavities and stuff. So I'm going to try to smooth that out a little bit and get that ready to go. Then I'm going to treat this for rust. We got some more rust remover. That stuff works for like maybe 3, maybe 4 treatments, and then it gets all black and it doesn't do anything. So got some new stuff. We're going to plop that in there tonight. And then we have to clean up this thing tomorrow. It's in pretty good shape overall. I'm not too worried about it, but probably clean this up and throw it in the rust remover as well. Then we get to have the very fun experience of creating one of these from scratch. I'm getting a lot better with the welding, but I'm still having these nagging issues where it'll either blow through or it just warps a lot and it's just weird stuff like that. So I looked up and I decided to do a little research, because even though I'm not going to change my technique doing this, I just want to know what's going on. There are kind of a couple major things that I'm doing wrong. First is that you don't want to use flux core wire, and I only have flux core set up. We don't have any gas. I've never used gas. I'm not going to buy gas. But that's one. The first thing is that the flux core actually, I guess, heats up the metal more than a normal gas welder would. The second is that if you're using the welding wire and using MIG welding, then you want to use wire that's smaller than the material. So if I'm using 035 wire, which I am, it's probably a little bit oversized compared to the sheet metal I'm trying to weld. So that's the second issue. And the third one basically is, if you're going to be using gas, then you want to have the right gas mixture. Of course, I don't have to worry about that. And of course, the overriding principle here is that I'm using some rusty metal with inconsistent thickness. So even though I'm having a hard time welding because I shouldn't be using a flux core with 035 wire, I'm also having a hard time because the material thickness is not the same from one part to the next part to the next part. So the intensity or the settings or the technique that I use on one part of this floor pan will not work on the next part, but I don't know if it's going to work or not until I blow a hole through it. Doing pretty well with taking the 2 pieces, and I'll do a little tiny tack on one side, tiny tack on the other side, and then maybe a couple more, and then I can do a medium tack in the middle, and that allows me to build up a little material so it's a little bit thicker material to get that medium tack onto. Those are my crash course welding lessons for this project. Again, I can't do anything about it. I'm not going to switch to gas welding and learn how to do that just for this. So I'm going to keep struggling through it, but it is working. It's just very slow going, and it's kind of frustrating sometimes with the holes and the metal inconsistency here. Got my seat brackets all degreased and metal prep for pour 15. This one's sitting on its piece of floorboard here that I just fixed up. Now I got to make the piece of floorboard for the other one. This is all that was left from the junkyard one, and it's not usable. So we have to make this one from scratch, almost from scratch. So we have 3 pieces of floorboard here that I was able to get out of the parts car and mine. And I think this one is the best example straight off. So we're going to cut off this. We have some holes down here. And I think this side can form this side. And this is actually the same length of indent, so it works out well. Then we can take this side up to about here, move it over, weld it on, and I think this corner should be able to patch this corner that is wholly over here. That should give us this part. Then this one we're going to have to make out of probably like something like this, or I don't know. We'll figure it out as we go. I'm going to start out with this side, see if I can make that happen, and hopefully it's not horrible welding, but it has been pretty horrible up to this point. Three and a half inches, 6 3/4. Well, I'm gonna do the cut and butt anyway. I think I probably should have Had a bigger piece here, it would have worked a lot better, but we got to do what we got to do. I got the cleaner new piece and I got the cleaner old piece, and now we got only the gap in here. And I'm going to try to tack in here. I didn't get quite the angle I wanted with the Dremel, so I'm going to have to bridge a little gap, but hopefully it's not too bad. Oh, got it. Sweet. Feeling good about it. Alright, 3.5 inches wide. It should be.
Going this morning.
It's going well. No major fuck ups yet. But the day is young. So we got this tacked up to the bottom piece. We still have a piece underneath that. So what I need to do is cut this here, and then we're going to tack that flush, cut that here, and then push it down and tack that flush. So it's like a two-part cut and flush and tack. Pretty handy actually. I kind of like it. Pull that up. Clap that flat. Double check our dimension. 3.5. Perfect. Now I'm going to go tack this up here, maybe up here a little bit. Well then, I think that is where I'm going to be with that. I ended up finding a lot of holes that were coming out in the front of this, so I just did a cut and butt patch on this, but it'll be fine. It's a floorboard. I think it's also kind of hard to put these things in when it's a tiny little piece, because you have less opportunity to kind of like less leverage, because it can move easier without having anything to hold it. Anyway, we're going to call that good for now. I'm going to clean it up later. It's really nasty and full of spatter, but I don't know what else to do. Been working with a really thin sheet metal here, and I've been kind of doing little tacks, doing a little drag, doing a little bit of what I found is I can do the little tacks to get it all together, and then afterward I can go back and do bigger tacks on the older tacks, and that'll give me a little bit better penetration and better surface quality on these bigger ones, rather than dealing with the kind of popcorn BS on the smaller ones. That's part one, so we're going to move on to part two here. I'm going to make this as a separate piece, and then we will measure them out and do a cut and butt in the middle to join them afterward. So let's get on with this edge here. Well, maybe I should start with this edge, because I can use the same profile as this one on this one, and then I can just add the end on there, maybe kind of hammer something in on the edges. Let's try that. Here's my process for this piece. I did cut one piece off, so I had one continuous piece, cut that in half, and then I added this section in. I used the cut and butt procedure to put that section in. I know my welds suck. It's holding, and I'm using a cut and butt procedure again to put this side in. So how did I figure out where that went? I had to measure out where my tangent goes, and I was able to mark a little line and pull it up against that radius there, and is able to measure my 6 3/4 inches. Since this used to be the same piece as this, I'm able to hold that up as a line and make sure that everything's square as best I can get it. Of course, it's not going to matter when it's in the floorboard. It doesn't matter if this is wonky, but I want to get it as close as I can. So now I'm going to do my cut and butt again, and we're going to get this thing all straightened out, flushed up. We're going to tack those together, weld them up, and then we will work on the back side here. I think I'm getting the hang of this cut and butt thing, so let's do something a little more complex with it. Trying to make this oblong kind of raised section now. You can see that the upper radii are very much the same as the lower radii, or at least close enough to fake it. The lower ones are really tight, and I didn't have anything that would match that. So what I'm doing here is I made a piece with the normal radii, and then I'm taking a piece with the normal radii upside down and cutting them off early. So I'm hoping that I can fake this corner in and kind of make that with sculpting some filling wire. And then on this side, I was going to add this corner to the strip here and make that the right length, but I didn't know where to put it because of the tangent between this corner and this corner. I'm not sure where that's going to land. So I think it's better to take the strip here, tack that, and cut and butt to the main portion here. I can come back afterward and fill this in wherever it lines up the best when everything else is flat. But I think this cut and butt thing works really well when you don't want to have to take all that time fitting up a piece perfectly. All you have to do is just lay it on top of there, tack it in, and drop it down, and it's just in there. So I think it works really well for kind of scabbing together pieces like this. You know, I worked it right here, right here, right here. We're going to do another here, and then we're going to do another on the edges. It's just a pretty handy technique to use for these kind of little pieces. Shouldn't move too much, right? If we move that over, I can get back to my 1.5 inch measurement there. So I'm going to cut along that line now. Burn up the next Dremel bit. Alright. This thing's starting to take shape here. We can see the edge here has a lot of booger weld in there, a little bit of coat hanger, and I might have to come back to there, but we're going to move on now to this corner. Got our big piece here and our small piece, and I drew a line on all the creases here, so I'm able to move this underneath, line up the line on the bottom, so I can slide it back and forth, and then line up our corner, our curve. So I marked that curve where I think it's going to be. We can cut this out to the areas that actually match up, and I can hopefully have something that will at least cut and butt well, if not fit perfectly the first time. Ready to weld in here. Had to do a lot more trimming than I wanted to, but just getting it so that little kind of lip there doesn't touch everything and push it out. It's got to lay in there correctly to be inserted. Looking a lot better now. I got some welds on there. These aren't my proudest welds. These are a little bit better on the bottom, but hammered the side flange up a little bit so it kind of matches the shape. I'm going to go clean these welds up with the grinder. We're going to grind that all flat. Hopefully grind a lot of this flat too. And then we can start fitting it up to that piece. I'm going to go and tack this thing in. We can trim this thing up then. I think we have enough extra room there where we can trim a nice straight line. Get these things merged up, joined up. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Damn. That's pretty awesome. I like that. Right here we're in the later phase of the cut and butt process. You can see the area that I still have to cut and butt. But I've cut this and butt this. I found out that I've had better luck with the welding two pieces of sheet metal together if I tack a couple times over here and tack a couple times over here, and then I'm able to draw them together. But I don't do a full big tack. I just kind of just barely get something on there. It allows the filler to create a small area of thicker material, and it's working a little bit better for me than it was before. So I think the longer I do this work, the better I get. It's just I don't do this very much, and I'm gonna keep going. I'm quite entertained by looking at the outline of this thing and seeing all the different back and forth and in and out, because those are all the little pieces that I've welded on, and I counted there have been 10 pieces in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I'm going to continue persisting on this. I'm going to finish the cut and butt process in here to join those two pieces together. Then we'll cut the whole thing into a rectangle and add some pieces on the sides so I can have a nice big place to work off of. At that point, we're going to be almost done. Another thing I've been learning about welding this really thin sheet metal is being very conscious of my stick out length and how I use that, because if I use, let's say, too high of a wire speed everywhere, then it's just going to blow through because it just melts everything and it falls out. But if I use the lower wire speed, I can get a little bit longer stick out, and when I need to put a little more material in, I can actually push the gun toward the weld. Similar to stick welding, I think, or TIG when you have that little wire there, the filler rod. So that's helping me a lot to allow myself to do kind of stand back a little bit and put less material in some places, but also come in and really dig it in and build it up when I need to. So it's really fun to go and learn these skills, because I think it's going to make me a better welder overall, with a lot of different materials or different thicknesses of steel. And I'm actually having a little bit of fun putting this thing together. Even when I blow through a hole, like you just saw, I can come in and build up the material around the hole and kind of work my way around at the backside. Sometimes I have to keep a little more heat in the material than I want to, but overall I take my air and I cool it off pretty quick there. I did have a little bit of minor warping on the pieces before, but after I leveled off those welds with the floppy disk, I was able to hammer them back flat, and it all worked out just fine. So I'm not worrying too much about it. I just want to be sure that I'm keeping the air on it and cycling out. Once I get the problem fixed that I'm working on, then I stop it, I cool it down, and I work on the next problem, and I do my tacks until something arises. I've been really good about this one, doing the tack, 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 the kind of three-part solution here, and it's given me a lot more control, and I'm able to get smaller welds and not have to do as many hole filling excursions. I got this tiny surfacing disc thing at Harbor Freight before I was doing the body work, and I never got to use it. So let's see if this will get in my little tiny hole right here. Not hole, but this little corner. In this corner, I can't get anything in there, not even my little 2-inch grinder disc. Yeah. Looks awesome. Oh yeah. Obviously I still have some welds in here, but I don't want to go and try to get those out and then end up with more pinholes. So I do have a couple tiny little pinholes in here, but I think the paint will take care of that pretty easily. I think this thing is ready to be set up with the seat bracket again. Looking pretty good. It's a nice patch panel now. Set this aside now and we'll work on the other one. This one's got to get the same treatment. My upper back and shoulders are hurting right now because I've been kind of hunched over like this for hours, but got to keep going, make sure this thing is ready to go. There's a lot of finishing work to do in here, and I think I might be breaking out the other little kind of 1-inch surfacing discs. I got a couple, little sandpaper ones on there that I might be able to use and get this a little bit smoother. Again, I don't want to go all the way down, but we're going to get this one ready and we can fit everything up. To get airflow in here, I've tried to keep the door open, but the chickens keep walking in and pooping on the ground, so hey girls, I had to make a little fence here that actually keeps them out pretty well. And they can't come in and poop in here, can ya? The time has come. We have the floorboard bases. This one is the one that I pieced together of 10 different parts in here, plus 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 14 different pieces total that I welded together to make this happen. It's not great, but it is as good as we're going to get today. We are warping. We're not the way we want to be, but it's going to be close enough that we'll be able to cut this down. And I don't know if you can see this, but the part here, the raised portion, is not really warped much at all. It's just the outside, so that's going to get cut off anyway and welded into the car. I have it cleaned up pretty well. This has been treated with POR 15 cleaner degreaser and metal prep already, and I'm going to mark out some holes on this so we can drill this out. I'm going to do 4 holes in the front. Then we got the bottom is going to have 3 holes, 1, 2, 3. And we will match up the spacing. The spacing I'm going to get off the better one, and that has 2 holes that they used in the factory and then one that ripped out. One that ripped out actually has a little piece on the bracket, so I can match that up very carefully from the bottom. Match my drill holes up, and then we can actually tack this from the bottom to make sure it's in the exact right place. Then measure where it is to locate the other one. So if we want these to be the same exact length and have the seat mounting hole in the exact location, I think we need to have these matching front to back here, which means I'm going to have to relief cut in here and over here, and we'll have to bring this in. I didn't notice these were slightly the wrong size before, so we're going to have to remedy that now, get it tacked back up, and we'll move forward. I was going to do weld through primer. Shoot! I am just screwing myself over here. I was going to put weld through primer under this flange here, and I totally didn't do it. So now we have to get under this flange while the thing is kind of welded on. That stuff sprayed way more like actual paint than the last can I had, different brands. So I did not anticipate it going on that wet, but I figure I don't care what the finish quality looks like as long as it's there, so I don't really care if it's wet or not. Come on. We'll finish those up and that will be done. Keen observers and nerds who watch the whole video will note that this line is not parallel with anything because I use the cut and butt fly-by-night method of just laying it down. So I wouldn't worry about that being at the wrong angle. It's probably at the right angle because these ones are lined up perfectly with what they used to be. So I measured that out. It turns out that the line there lines up pretty well with 2 inches at there. So I was able to take my combo square and line up just at the right place, and transfer that over. It's also 1/2 inch from the lower tangent here up to the edge of this bracket, so I'm able to have 2 lines there, line this thing up perfectly, and we can clamp it right there. I might actually first mark that out and drill some holes in the lower piece. Worked out pretty well because the bracket itself is a little bit thicker steel and easier to weld into. Up front we have that same, it's not an issue, but the same phenomenon of the angle here being different than the bracket. Not going to worry about it again. It's how it's supposed to be for what I did. Looking pretty good though. I am really pretty happy about it. I was getting really nervous about the stuff, but I think it's coming together. Ignore the boogers. It's fine. I did boogers over the better welds just to plug a couple holes. Probably made it worse. That's what it is. I want to get the weld through primer going on the correct way this time and actually get it inside here and on top of here before they go together. So I'm going to have to mark these so I don't lose them. This is the line I want. So we're going to go like that. Hopefully that will show through the primer. Well, I don't want to forget a second time, so let's throw some weld through primer on this before welding it on. It's kind of the whole point of weld through primer is to be able to weld on top of it. I can just barely see a couple scratches there, so I think we did well enough. Let's go and get this thing ready to weld on. Flip it over very, very carefully. Oh, buddy. I think we got it. We had a little tiny flame out of this one too, so there's something about fully curing this primer. And I didn't do it, did I? We have tacks on all the holes. Finish him. Alright guys, I have been hunched over this table for a week and a half on this project, and it is just a smaller part of a larger project, the floor pans, so I am happy to get this thing off my table. We started with stuff that looked like this. This is actually the base for the seat bracket that I actually cut off and used. So this is the quality of material that we were starting with. We started with stuff like this as well, and I am so glad that we were able to transform that. When we go to this one, it turned out it was 14 different pieces of steel going into this, and the top part was 4 different pieces on the bracket itself. Now we have as close to a factory reproduction panel as I can get. We have a little bit of warpage in it, but it's going to be okay when I push it down and tack it together. It's all going to flatten out, I believe. Here's the real question you're probably wondering: is it really worth it to go through this trouble to make these parts? And you know, I don't think there's a whole lot of option for the brackets themselves. They're pretty thick steel and they're not that hard to make, but the base of it, well, it was a pain in the butt. I was using flux core, which is not, I guess, recommended for this. I was using 035 wire, which is not recommended for this. I am not going to go and get a gas canister just to do this. I am not going to go and switch the welder over to 030 or whatever smaller wire I can get. It's just not worth my effort as far as I'm concerned. I think what I would have done if I went back and did it again is I would have gotten some like 1/4-inch thick steel and cut out these shapes and made a positive and negative die, and used my hydraulic press up there to actually press these things. If I did that, I actually could have made reproduction panels myself and actually sold them. And I'm not against experimenting with that in the future, but I think I kind of wish I would have done that instead. The reason I picked the technique of welding for this project was I figured it was a lower risk way to do it, lower risk technique, that I was more likely to get it done, but it might take longer to get it done. The press die would have been a higher risk, where it would be done a lot quicker if it went right, but if it went badly, I could end up spending twice as much time. So that's why I did what I did, and I kind of regret it, but we can try something else in the next time, maybe for the Greenbrier. Anyway, hey, thank you to Clark's Corvair Parts for sponsoring this video and this project. I'm very excited to get this thing out. I'm trying to get this thing done for Press On Regardless in early September, and we got to get moving on this thing like fast. So that's part of the reason I was kind of feeling nervous about getting this thing done on time. We'll see you guys in the next video. It's going to be putting these things into the floorboards and putting those front floorboards in. I don't know if we'll get to the rears, but we're going to put the fronts in, make that happen, put some seats in this thing. Press on. I had a dream last night that we trailered the Corvair out to Press On Regardless, and my navigator asked me, "Is it ready to go?" And I said, "There's no engine in the car," and we couldn't rally. So I think I need to work on the car more.